The Mississippi River, the second longest river in the U.S. With the world's third largest watershed of over 1.2 million square miles, it is an area of extreme habitat diversity and biological productivity, and a migration route for many birds and fish. More than 50 cities and 18 million people rely on the river for their water supply.
The Mississippi River is also the second most polluted river in the United States. Due to the immense amount of pollution dumped into it, some scientists have dubbed it the most polluted coastal ecosystem in the world. According to a report from 2012, 12.7 million gallons of pollutants are dumped in the river every year, including large amounts of arsenic and mercury, which are hazardous to people's health. That's just into the river itself. According to the same report, 125 million gallons of toxic pollutants are dumped into tributaries to the Mississippi and in the Mississippi watershed every year.
Much of this pollution enters the river around the cities and towns that line the edge of the water. Some of it comes from factories or sewer systems, but the majority of the city watershed pollution comes from stormwater. Stormwater is the generally untreated and unfiltered water that flows off streets and into a storm sewer. In Minneapolis and St. Paul, that stormwater flows directly into the Mississippi.
With the water comes everything that gets left in the street, whether it's trash, oil dripping off a car, or road salts left over from the winter. Rain also washes away pesticides and fertilizer from people's lawns and into the river, and decomposing leaves feed massive algae blooms, which deplete the dissolved oxygen content of the river, a necessary element for most aquatic life to survive. All of these issues are very important to the natural ecosystem of the Mississippi River. So how serious is the problem for the Twin Cities, and what can you do to help?
Before the metro area, nutrient levels in the Mississippi are relatively healthy. Once the river reaches the inner suburbs, however, nutrient levels skyrocket. Nutrients from leaves and other organic matter that have washed into the river fertilize algae, causing it to bloom en masse. Then, all the algae dies at once and begins to decompose, a process that uses lots of dissolved oxygen from the water.
A certain amount of dissolved oxygen is needed for all aquatic life to survive. So if there's a huge influx of algae decomposition, it effectively suffocates all other life in the water. Water naturally dissolves oxygen from the air, but in some areas, not fast enough. This creates what is known as a dead zone, where no aquatic life can survive. The largest dead zone in the world is at the mouth of the Mississippi River in the Gulf of Mexico.
Chlorine is also a major polluter of the river. The main cause of chlorine in the river is from road salt, or sodium chloride. Chlorine is very toxic to fish and other aquatic wildlife at very low levels. In 20,000 gallons of water, the size of a standard oil tanker, 1 pint of chlorine would be enough to poison fish and other wildlife living in the water. Once chlorine enters the water, it is difficult to remove.
We talked to Kate Clayton from Friends of the Mississippi River. Friends of the Mississippi River is a community organization that focuses on river cleanup and lobbying for pro-river legislation. So what are residents doing to negatively affect the quality of that stormwater runoff and therefore negatively affect the river?
So anything that comes out of our buildings, so our showers, our dishwashers, sinks, and all that, does get treated before it goes to the river. The problem is that most people think that anything that goes down the storm drain is also treated. So
Yep.
the misinformation there is that there are two different systems. And so given that, I have seen people walk over and drop their cigarettes down a storm drain. I have seen people put their kids' diapers down storm drains.
Really? Wow.
I've seen people dump oil, paint, their leftover lunches from their cars down storm drains. So, just the view of a drain as trash or dump of some sort is definitely what is kind of the focus, I guess you could say, of how we are treating our water or our river.
So my last question, which you already have, is why should people care about keeping the river clean?
A lot of people like to think, we want to do it for the animals and because it's pretty. And yes, those are all very valid reasons and ones that I agree with 100%. And yes, we need all of our parks for our mental health and getting out and enjoying our city. But the Mississippi River is also drinking water for over 18 million people between St. Cloud and New Orleans.
Yeah.
So, I guess for a public health reason, that would be the top one, is that whatever we put into our river, we have to clean out of our river in order to get enough healthy drinking water for all of the people who use it.
Yeah.
We also talked to Lane Christensen, the city coordinator for the Adopted Drain program. The aim of the program is to keep the city's storm drains cleaner by allowing residents to adopt or take responsibility for an individual storm drain.
Okay, so you're like revamping your program, basically.
Yep. So there's going to be a new online process where people can go online and select the storm drains they want to adopt online. They can keep track of them. They can keep track of when they were last cleaned, and they can even give their storm drains nicknames, which is kind of cool. So it's more of an online visual online process to kind of streamline the whole process. When people adopt a storm drain, we ask them to keep it clear of garbage, leaves, and really anything in the street.
Why should people do it? What impact does the river have in people's lives every day?
Well, I don't think everybody realizes that everything that goes in a storm drain goes into our lakes and creeks in the Mississippi River.
Mm-hmm.
And so anything that's in the street, when it rains, it goes in there, and that all goes into the lake. So if you want to go swimming, the local beaches, if you want to go fishing, you want to see nice clean water, you don't want to see green, icky water. So it's an urban environment. It's a little more challenging, but Minneapolis has got a very environmental conscious population, so that really helps.
Stormwater pollution is a real issue in our city. It greatly reduces river quality and is detrimental to the natural ecosystem. However, there are lots of things any person can do to help solve the issue, such as keeping storm drains clear of trash and yard waste, reducing use of road salts, and being conscious of the fact that storm drains lead directly to our very own Mississippi River.